Are we on Talking Joe?
Brand new.
Hey, we're talking brand new Joe. Hey, we're on a brand new show. Deep dives, blow by blow. Spotting Uzis and crossbow. Like a buzzball or a pogo. Got ninjas like Don Shadow. Comics are how I spend my dough. We're coming to you in stereo. It's time for Talking Joe. With Mark and Tim, here we go.
Brand new.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe Comics podcast. And for a change, we are live streaming this live instead of just recording it, in the privacy of our own home, and then editing and putting it out there later on. So that's what we're doing today. So it means that anyone that is watching it live, you do have the opportunity to interact with us and, leave us a comment. If we get a comment, we will click it up to share like so. You know about this stuff. You don't need to be told. Today, we will be looking at G.I. Joe issue number 3 from Skybound, which just came out a couple of days ago, 15th of January. But I will not be looking at this issue just on my own. I will be looking at it, indeed, with my co-host. It's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners and viewers, and particularly hello, live viewers. All dozen of you. I haven't looked at the counter. I'm assuming it's more than 11.
It's yeah. I mean, you're being very modest. Of course, we're in our thousands, as I'm sure you know. So
I haven't done that joke in a long time. The escalating, right? When I first joined Talking Joe, wasn't there a joke where every few weeks I would refer to the dozens or hundreds or thousands of fans I had brought to Talking Joe via my blog, arealamericanbook.com. It's really in the hundreds of thousands now. I'm surprised that the stream isn't breaking up under the stress of being split to so many different IP addresses.
Yeah, I can see whenever you share the post that gives the URL to where people can find the episode, the latest episode, the stats, they just sort of blow up. The spike is so severe, the graphs just can't cope. So I appreciate if you stop doing that. We can't cope with the traffic. So thanks everyone for joining us live. We'll stop talking about that now. But interesting times. We're talking about issue 3. Last time I felt like it was an enormous weight. You've got notes. Wow.
I always have notes.
Yeah. But with I think you got bored and sort of started drawing at the top of your notes in fancy type setting there, with making it look like it's like one of Larry Hama's convention signs or something, with the particularly fancy typeface there at the top of your page. Some interesting news this week we'll get into maybe before we cover the issue itself. Big announcement from Skybound about a new title in the ARA world. This is our the Energon universe episode, so we'll probably get into the detail of that in the next ARA episode that we record. But Tim, initial reaction to Silent Mission being announced?
Yes.
Very good. My initial reaction is, see, I did that in. I was cheering in silent. So yeah, great to see. Yeah, one a week. G.I. Joe, one a week. It's your dreams come true. So very exciting times.
Finally, G.I. Joe is treated like the Marvel or DC 5th week sort of stunt that it could be. Like Tangent Comics or Amalgam Comics. Like one a week, or in the case of Amalgam, more than one a week. Yes, more on that in a future A Real American Hero episode of Talking Joe. But if anyone at Skybound is only watching or listening to the Energon Universe episodes and isn't going to get our bigger excitement breakdown of this news. Yes, awesome. Thank you. More.
Very good. Another bit of news. Tom Reilly has got an art dealer, and he typically will share on that site the latest issue as it comes out. So indeed, we've got a new art drop from Tom Reilly on his art dealer's website, which is modernmythologycomicart.com. I'll say that again, modernmythologycomicart.com, or you can just search Tom Reilly original art, you'll find it. And that's where his latest art is found. He's dropped issue 3, so we can actually see the art to issue 3 as we're discussing it in terms of inks on the page before Jordie Bellaire has worked her wonders with the colours. So and it's I think it's really good value there. So if you are an art person, worth checking out. But in addition to just being able to thrill at seeing the original art there, they did include some G.I. Joe designs. So some of these we've seen in like the back of the ash cans or shared in online and other places, but some of it is brand new. So I think the Tomax or Zaymot that we've got here on screen was in the back of one of the ash cans for sure. But the Mercer, I think, is a brand new piece of art. All of these character designs have them staring at their hands, and so yeah, this is the Viper design that we see in the of Mercer that we've been seeing in the book. There's a tantalizing mace there on the page. I wonder if that whose special weapon they were thinking would be. But Tim, the most exciting element of this art design. Art drop of the designs was this page here, which has Hawk and a design for Beachhead. So we've got a take here of Tom Reilly design of Beachhead, which was done in 2024, which isn't to say that Beachhead will definitely appear in the book or appear anytime soon. But what we do know is that sort of as they were working on the run-up to issue 1, he did decide to do his own version of Beachhead. That might just be that he liked the character and wanted to have a take on it. So I don't know how much we can read into it, but a lot of fun to see.
When I spoke with Tom Reilly right after he signed at my store, Hub Comics, right after issue 1 of G.I. Joe came out, I asked him about the timeline of his year, because there were many, many months in publishing between the end of the Duke miniseries and the beginning of the main G.I. Joe series. And I wondered if he had taken on some projects from other publishers that he could talk about, that he couldn't talk about, if he had taken a vacation, if he had started on issue 1 of G.I. Joe or prepped for it pretty immediately after issue 5 of Duke. And it's that latter one, right? A couple of covers, like a cover for like a Star Wars Darth Vader comic, a cover for a Batman and Robin Year 1 issue. But he said that he pretty much started designs for G.I. Joe #1 right after Duke #5.
Mm-hmm. So let's see, have a look at other things that he shared. So this is the Duke, Hawk, and Stalker that I think they were combined for the team image that was used in a promo, but also used on the second printing cover to Duke issue #1. And it's interesting to see here sort of Tom Reilly's methods of working, that quite often he'll have like a head which he's not completely happy with and might sort of draw an alternative head which is then sort of comped into the final image. And there's another page that has a similar thing. We've got Duke, fascinated by his hand, rock and roll with his devil horn fingers. On this page, his right hand is cut out, and apparently that's because Tom had drawn something on the back of this page of paper that he needed to use. So that this particular page has got a hole in it. And there we've got a take on Cobra Commander, sort of, in a leotard, and then with a sort of a long coat tunic look to it, and he's sort of doing a couple of different takes on like sword handles and on the helmet. So this helmet is not that we see on screen is not the one that has ended up being used in the pages of the comic itself.
There's a small detail here I want to point out that Reilly is not inking the bottom line on the soles of these boots here on Cobra Commander. And if you go back, Rock and Roll and Duke, and he's not inking that bottom line on Stalker's Machete. And that is a decision with a subtle result, which it's a little bit more work for the colorist. They're going to have to, Jordie Bellaire is going to have to pay a little bit more attention about, ending one color and butting up one color against another. But I think it has to do with a very subtle idea of sort of texture or overlap, that in the case of the boots, if you draw that bottom line, the boot is slightly separated off of the ground plane, but we are aware of boots really sort of squishing into floors and grounds. And in the case of that machete, I think it just adds a very subtle sense that the machete is sharp and that there isn't a black line that holds it in. And that's cool. And then was there a new one? Had you gone one more slide forward?
Then we've got Clutch and Stalker with, and the Stalker's got in this design, it's not coloured so it doesn't pop quite as much, but he's got that camelback sort of hydration tube wire coming down to him. And each of these Joe characters have got kind of real world weaponry with them, whereas the Cobras sort of tend to have a little bit more of a sort of fantastical look to their weaponry. We've got a more kinetic Baroness in her outfit, and the sort of the panes of that sort of outfit. I guess it's an under tunic and over tunic and body armor sort of split out into separate layers. There's always a very purposeful dotting of both Baroness's and Chameleon's mole, sort of just there below her bottom lip. If you look for it, they always remember to draw it. So I think it's something that they are having an intent behind. And then I think the final one is there is Scrap Iron. And then there was the heads that are used in the Energon universe box in the top corner of the book. Yeah, oops.
These poses where each character is standing straight up with their hand out. We saw the Risk version of that with a little bit more design elements around it and a sort of a bold dark blue background color as a high ratio variant cover for issue number 1, which made me think that all subsequent issues would have that Reilly had drawn a bunch of these characters and we would see them. And what we have seen so far are more of these 1 in 25, what I call explosion back, which I know is a slightly confusing term because explosion back refers to the back of the cards from 1982 and 1983. And I'm referring to the front of the cards, but the explosion with a black background behind a Joe or Cobra character from the original toy packaging. We have seen those for every single G.I. Joe related Energon Universe comic. And we have also now seen a couple of these E.J. Sue vehicle design schematics as I think 1 in 50. But we have not seen any more of these Tom Reilly character designs. And I would like to. And if we don't, I've got 2 words for you, Skybound. Trading cards.
Nice, yeah. Maybe when they start introducing more of the more brand new characters, maybe they'll dip their toe into it again, potentially.
Yeah, and certainly it's the kind of thing I would hope to see as a bonus feature at the back of a big hardcover, particularly since we're not getting any bonus features in the back of the 5-issue paperbacks. Boo Skybound. But in Skybound's defense, that goes back 15 years plus to, even their Walking Dead and Invincible softcover collections. So we can be disappointed, but we shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So that was what I wanted to share from that thing. So that was Modern Mythology comicart.com, Tom Reilly original art, and specifically the designs. Let's get into this issue, which was described in its synopsis as As tensions rise within G.I. Joe and punches are thrown, Cobra hunts a venomous new ally. So speculation when that was originally posted, what that venomous might be. It does point to Dr. Venom, but I thought, is that too obvious? Could it be Venomous Maximus? That would be wild. Who would be expecting that? No, it is Dr. Venom. Let's spoilers. So this issue was brought to us by the creative team of writer Joshua Williamson, artist Tom Reilly, colorist Jordie Bellaire, letterer Russ Wooton, editor Ben Abernethy, logo and production design Andre Juarez, and production Ashby Florence.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Okay. Cover A is drawn and colored by Tom Reilly. And I gotta know, what has chopped this coffee mug so cleanly in half? And not only do I want to know that now, the week that this comic book came out, I wanted to know it 8 weeks ago when I first saw this cover in the catalogs. Okay. As with a lot of wonderful comics that I love, the first thing that I am struck by when I see this cover is the color. Of course, it is a wonderful drawing with a bold diagonal in its composition. Duke and Risk make for one diagonal, and then really subtly, you almost don't see it, the 2-point perspective on the ceiling is a diagonal in the opposite direction. But what I see when I look at this cover is 2 or 3 blocks of orange and yellow, orange, and a block of light blue. And G.I. Joe covers just don't look like this. And it's thrilling because this really pops and it really looks different than what's next to it on the shelf. It also looks pretty different from the previous issue's Tom Reilly cover, which, if you were to describe it in a couple of words, is pretty similar. Duke and Baroness fighting blue and yellow, right? And here is Duke and someone in Baroness fighting blue and orange, but light blue and orange. Okay, so I could just say it every other sentence of an entire episode of Talking Joe. What a boon it is to the brand that Jordie Bellaire is coloring this series. There's no rendering here. There are no gradients. It's just hard edge colors and mostly flats, right? That orange red folder on the bottom. Okay, so
I think though, to have a bit of a fact correction, it's actually Tom Reilly coloring himself here.
You're right. I'm sorry. I got carried away because I was looking at Jordie Bellaire's name on the cover. But as I said at the very beginning, this is drawn by Tom Reilly, and you are correct. Thank you. Tom Reilly draws and colors his covers. Jordie Bellaire colors his interiors. But he has said that they have a very similar approach to colors. So everything I said before about Jordie Bellaire being a boon to the brand is true on the insides of the book. My apologies, Tom Reilly, that of course it is your bold and interesting color choices that are making these covers pop. Okay, so with some office supplies getting scattered, including pens and a tablet and a waste paper basket, Duke and a stapler, Duke and Risk are fighting. The Baroness wants them to stop.
Yeah, here's a philosophy question. When does a coffee cup stop becoming a coffee cup and start becoming a pen cup?
That's good. You know, my favorite cup holder for pens or spatulas and kitchen utensils is the 1999 Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace large plastic Pepsi Qui-Gon Jinn cup that I got at the midnight screening.
Nice.
Opening night of that movie, which is in our kitchen as we speak. Okay, cover B is drawn by David Finch and colored by Adriano Lucas. And this cover is sort of a counterpoint to Finch's cover to issue 1. And if you sort of skip his cover to issue 2, because issue 1 was all of Cobra standing with a bright background color. And here is all of the Joes standing, posing, lunging. Of course, issue 2 was one person fighting another person. I do think I see a coloring error here because that's Risk on the left by Clutch's elbow and under the 3. And Risk has a different complexion than Clutch in all the other covers and interiors. But here he looks like a white guy. So maybe I'll email Skybound and ask them to change that and also fix the typo in the issue, which we'll get to. So this is a very dynamic cover considering that no one is firing a weapon and no one is actually running. It's a sort of energetic static pose. It's the speed lines that do it. It's Duke pointing, and it's the slight sort of curving arc that goes from Clutch's weapon to the direction of Clutch's spine, to Duke's arm, to the Baroness's head, to her weapon, and then down to the eye lines of CoverGirl and Stalker. That it's sort of the same way that a minute hand on a clock would go from 12 to 1 to 2 to 3, but in this case it's curved and the curvature changes. Lots of that noodly David Finch detail in there that I don't love, but people do. But the relatively modest coloring job, right? Like basically no rendering, just again hard edge colors, although there is some rendering in the background, really helps sort of tamp down on the busyness of it. Listener, viewer, fan, artist, Greg Augustin says, Cover B's motion reminds me of Jim Lee's Justice League #1 cover. And I would agree. And I would also say that, Finch is certainly in that Venn diagram of Jim Lee, because Finch was drawing a lot like Mark Silvestri at Top Cow. And, going back to the late 80s, Silvestri and Jim Lee shared a studio and were drawing more similarly than dissimilarly. Cover C. Cover C is drawn and colored by Pablo Villalobos. Baroness is standing front foreground, 2/3 full body from head to knees. She's leaning her weight all onto one leg, and she's got one arm at her waist, and her other arm is propping her machine gun against her shoulder. And she's got a little attitude in her face with 2 cocked brows. Behind her is Duke looking off in the distance, and behind him is a rock formation and a little bit of lens flare, which I'll allow, and the sun, which disappears behind the G.I. Joe logo. This is one of those covers that, even though there are technically 5-6 different colors here, because the values are all pretty similar and the colors there's no high contrast, right? The highest contrast here is the blue star on her chest against the light gray of her breastplate, or the yellow-orange logo itself against the sort of hazy brown of that rock on the top left. But this is one of those covers that starts to read like it's monochrome, even though it's technically not. I like this cover, and I would like to see this artist draw more G.I. Joe.
Just a quick pause there, just to point out another Baroness cover here.
Yes, but okay, she's somewhere, even if it's not too specific. And Duke is there, and she's in her current Energon Universe costume, not her 80s costume, or like an overly detailed Jamie Tyndall take on her 80s costume. So while technically it is a Baroness cover, I don't think of this as the sort of eye-rolling, another Baroness variant cover that some fans have started to note.
It's nice. It's nicely done. There's a lot of sort of character there, and it's not just an out-and-out, boobs out, bum out kind of approach to the thing. It's nicely done for what it is.
Okay, cover D is David Nakayama's 1:10 ratio variance. And this is Chameleon dancing around the blasts that are coming from the left, from CoverGirl, and from the right, from the Cobra Valkyries. This is part 3 of 4 of a connecting cover image. And I ordinarily really like David Nakayama's covers. I like his textures. There's just a little bit of cheesecake to his poses and proportions, right? Breasts, waist, butt, big eyes, sort of smiling and sort of bright colors. And I was excited that he was doing some G.I. Joe work, and I did like his issue 1 and his issue 2 cover. But man, I got to say, this is a strange pose and a strange composition, and I'm sorry, I don't think this cover works. And also some strange proportions. I feel like her waist is too skinny, her breasts are too big, and her butt is too big. But I just don't know what she's doing. Cover E is drawn by Travis Moore and colored by, again, Adriano Lucas.
Okay, I'll stop there.
So here is the Baroness. This is one more of these 125 ratio variants where a character, just the character, no background, is in front of an explosion, which recalls the 1982 Hector Garrido Hasbro toy packaging explosion. Baroness has a pistol and a machine gun. She's in her new G.I. Joe Good Guy Energon Universe armor, and she looks like a character in combat and not like a model posing to be sexy, although the pose is a little bit butt focused. But this is not someone posing for the camera and like thrusting out their rib cage. This is someone sort of balancing their weight because there's recoil on their weapon.
Mm-hmm. I'll interject that that Travis Moore seems to be the go-to guy for these explosion covers now. That this is the 5th that I have seen from him. That there's also a Clutch, a Risk, which is issue 4, a Valkyrie, and a Scrap Iron on Destro. So he has done at least 5 from covers up to this point, because I think a couple of them might be future releases.
The 1 in 50 G.I. Joe issue number 3 cover is by Patricia Martin, not an artist that I am familiar with. This is very much a design. There are no outlines. It's all geometric shapes, which makes me think it was drawn in Illustrator, although that might be a very old-fashioned observation. It's Cobra Commander with some World War II bombers behind him in the distance, in front of a cloud formation, which itself is in front of a silhouette of Cobra Commander's helmet again. And then below and in the foreground is a repeated Cobra flag and a repetition of Cobra tank turrets. This whole cover is, except for a tiny bit of yellow, just 4 colors, 2 blues, a red, and the white. It recalls World War II and prior posters, both American and also from other countries, which are very much about poster design and communicating to people in wartime the importance of supporting your own country and fighting the enemy. And this cover recalls, and I think very much inadvertently, I don't think there's any way that this is any kind of homage. I think sooner, every 2 or 5 years, someone's going to say, oh, let's do a G.I. Joe cover that looks like an old 1930s propaganda war poster. This reminds me a little bit of Tom Feaster's 2010 painted cover for G.I. Joe Origins issue number 21, which was also reused for 2 graphic novel collections of that series, G.I. Joe Origins. I understand that this one is less graphical and more dimensional. I understand that these characters are looking left and not right. But if you were to just describe it in a sentence, right? Limited color, certain kind of poses that feel very much sort of prescribed and not natural, right? Like you wouldn't actually have these 4 characters standing that close together doing that. And then a flag and some negative space or sky. I think both these images are referring back to the same thing. So, Mark, are there any retailer variant covers for G.I. Joe?
There are. I was just going to point out that this is the second cover that we've had from Patricia Martin, that she also did the second print cover for issue 1 in what I described as a paper cut style. Do we have any more covers? We do have the first of the variant.
Why are there so many covers of Baroness? 'Cause she's on the other side. Cobra are villains, my own only conclusion. The costume makes us wide-eyed. So we've been shown, and some people think she is fit, though it is wrong blatantly. Someday we'll complete it, the cover collection, the Baroness, her leather, and me.
Okay, that's enough of that. So this one is Felix Leon of the Baroness in her new Joe costume. This is exclusive to 616 Comics, and I believe comes in two versions, standard and also a foil variant. So she's sat down on top of what looks to be the rock or rubble of some sort, with her leg posed in combat readiness, with with her weapon slung over her shoulder.
Okay, fans, if you're ever wondering if we might consider a cover of the Baroness to be more cheesecake than would be natural, like too sexy, just ask yourself, would Duke or Stalker sit this way? Or since these aren't real characters and it's really people who are making them do this, would an artist draw Duke or Stalker posed this way? And if they did, would your reaction be something like, huh? And maybe you wouldn't buy it. So that's where we see an inconsistency, that some artists, occasionally some editorial decisions, are treating the Baroness differently.
And the inside front cover to the issue calls out a further two artists doing retailer variant covers, which is Rose Besch and Frank Cho. We've not, or I say we being the collective we, I definitely have not seen those two covers yet. So I think they are yet to be revealed. Sometimes with these variant covers, they will be revealed after the launch of the main comic itself, and may potentially tie into, for example, a convention appearance or something similar. So I would expect that we will see those covers down the line at some point. It's quite exciting to have Frank Cho doing a variant cover, because to date he is only really known for doing one piece of G.I. Joe art, which was a commission for, I believe it was for the London Super Comic Convention. He did a commission which was about 10 years ago, and that was then coloured and made into a poster print that I think he typically sells at conventions, so it hasn't been like a sort of through a publisher or through Hasbro, which features Baroness sort of drawn in that very Frank Cho style as being the main image, with a lot of graphics sort of playing in the background, giant hail cobra and Scarlet in the nude in the background, sort of in his Bic pen rollerball style noodling detail, along with a skull. This wouldn't be the cover because it's the wrong universe. This is not the Energon universe Baroness. So this is really just to give a flavour as to the, Frank Cho in the world of G.I. Joe.
Also, I can't imagine Hasbro saying yes to any character
in the nude, no,
showing a bare butt on a cover to G.I. Joe. But I can certainly imagine some retailers wanting to try with a retailer exclusive variant cover.
And as someone actually pointed out in the comments, with all of those blank covers and stuff, sometimes you do get people sort of just doing their own thing. That's Joe there. Whatnot is full of random nude Baroness covers, just creepy, to be honest. So yeah, a lot of sort of fairly gratuitous sort of nudie Baroness versions are out there on the likes of Whatnot and eBay and that kind of thing, either on a blank piece of paper or on one of those blank covers.
But G.I. Joe's not being singled out because
Rogue,
everywhere, Harley Quinn,
anything.
Name a female character in comics or pop culture, and there's probably a similar treatment.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I think up next is a plot breakdown. So, last issue, Duke led his new team in a mission that went terribly wrong. Rock and Roll is dead, Stalker and Covergirl are injured, and Clutch is missing, with the new guy, Risk, causing friction.
Plot breakdown.
We pick up as Clutch is in Cobra's Springfield base, disguised as a Viper and listening in to Destro's plans. Cobra Commander reveals that he suspects an infiltrator in the midst. This triggers a Cobra law agent disguised as a worker to attack Cobra Commander. Cobra Commander sends him to his grisly end in a pit of robot snakes. Cobra Commander tells Destro that he's already sent allies to retrieve the brainwave scanner inventor Dr. Monev. Meanwhile, back at the pit, Risk and Duke continue their fight before Stalker interrupts and reminds them of their real priorities. The Joes then receive a transmission from Clutch, warning of the Dr. Monev plans. In Washington, D.C., Dr. Monev, aka Dr. Venom, is in custody on his way to testify in front of Congress. However, the agents escorting him are Crimson Guards. Duke, Risk, and the Baroness arrive on the scene to halt the motorcade and thwart his abduction. As they grab Monev and flee the scene on their motorbikes, they are pursued by Tomax and Zaymot, the Crimson Twins, in a Stinger Jeep. There we go, Tim. What did you think of this?
Since I just talked for a bit about the covers, I actually wanted to get your top-down reaction to issue 3, Mark.
Yeah, I thought that this issue was a little bit more of a return to kind of like a bit of a business as usual type of issue. We had issue 1 really sort of introducing this new title, the issue 1, the team, a big mission. Issue number 2 was a sort of a continuation of that and the consequences of the big events of that mission with the sort of death of Rock and Roll, introduction of a new character, Risk, and this one was felt like slightly lower stakes. It's more about a continuation of, okay, this is the things that we had set up in issue number 2. Clutches the spy in the midst. The Joes are recovering in the hospital, and we're teeing up the next mission of Dr. Monev, and sort of just continuing in on that. So it felt like a more sort of organic continuation of the previous issues rather than it's quite a bigger bang, I think, maybe as we saw in issues 1 and 2. I guess that's sort of, we're in this world where we're used to this creative team a little bit more, so we're slightly more familiar territory. Does that kind of, that reaction, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, this issue is in some ways an epilogue to the fight from the last issue. The Joes don't confront any big Cobra characters in this issue. They confront 2 very small Cobra characters. And then what happens on the final page, Tomax and Zaymot show up. So if you're looking for sort of the graph of, rising action, climax, falling action in a 5-issue arc, I think this will be a 5-issue arc. I think this will be a trade paperback with 5 issues worth. Maybe it'll be 6. Next issue is going to have some kind of fight in DC, on the streets of DC, with a Stinger and a couple Joes on. Are these Rams? Are these modified Rams? Are these classified Rams?
They've not been called Rams. I've not actually done the side by side to look at the design and say against the classified Ram to see how close they actually are. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly what it's certainly what you're put in mind of is that a classified type of design of the Ram.
Hello, it's Mark from the future here, just to interject that having had the opportunity to look online against the classified Ram design, the green one originally, which came with Breaker, it is indeed very much the same design.
At the same time, it does look like a perhaps a classified take on the Ram with sort of 15% Silver Mirage in it. Because the Silver Mirage is a little bit more angular and forward, and the Ram is a little bit more up and down, stationary, and sort of, standard army grade shapes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was getting to is that I think there will be sort of other and bigger fights in issues 4 and 5, and I don't think we're going to meet any Transformers in issues 4 or 5, and I don't think we're going to meet a lot of new characters in 4 and 5. Maybe Beachhead. So this issue does feel like continuing action and also setting up sort of the next sort of high stakes moment.
And also a lot of nice character moments, which I guess isn't to be underplayed, that you really get a sense that these are fleshed out characters with their own personalities and their own way of dealing with things and their own agendas as well. That, Mercer is not Destro, is not Cobra Commander, and sort of Risk is not Duke, is not Stalker kind of thing.
Yeah. So what strikes me about this issue, as with previous issues, is that color artist Jordie Bellaire keeps changing her palette every scene, every 2 or 3 or 4 pages. That one panel where this Cobra Law infiltrator is down in a convenient death trap pit with a remote control activated trap door. When he's down there being attacked by robot snakes, the color scheme there is different than 10 or 20 feet up, where we're in this Cobra base and everything is this sort of middle blue. And then on the next page, we cut to inside the pit, and Bellaire is using that sort of very, very light aqua gray for backgrounds, and then reds for this foreground fight,
which is actually mirrored on the front cover.
Yes. I'm struck by, I think I had briefly forgotten the scale of the Cobra operation and Cobra Commander's ambitions, that we have this giant base, right? So you are set up for some kind of surprise at the bottom of page 1, because Clutch says, I just need to find some kind of communications hub, ... And that when you turn the page, he and you are going to see something interesting. It might be funny. It might be scary. It might be really, really big. It might be alien. There might be a giant hangar with Megatron missing his arms. It might be a big Cobra base. Art collector, friend of the show, Shane Simic says, Tim's point about the colors seems so obvious, but many comics completely miss this. And my response is, yeah, there are a lot of color artists in comics who know how to use Photoshop, but don't know how to paint, don't know color theory, and don't know how light behaves. And Jordie Bellaire knows that less is more, particularly for art like Tom Reilly.
And in this case, it's sort of helping tell the story, because it's like often linking the story beats to the emotional feel of a particular color. It's helping you realize, okay, we're moving from one scene to another, or the sense of space within a particular space. That looking at this Cobra big giant floor that they've got, if we were to cut from this panel to another Cobra room that's all bathed in red, then we're probably in that kind of control room up in the top left corner. If we were to cut into something that's bathed in blue light, then maybe we're in that kind of laboratory scene down in the in these weird stapler shaped buildings.
These bays that are down 5 stairs.
Yeah, and then and cutting to scene as to another scene entirely is sort of it's all very clear, and the good coloring helps tell that story.
Yeah, Jordie Bellaire has written some comics, and she did an interview with Image Plus, which was a magazine, sort of half magazine, half catalog that Image published 6 or 7 years ago. And she talked about in this interview article how color tells a story. And, if you go ahead a couple pages to that, where we see the pit and Bareness and Hawk are watching Duke and Risk fight, the fact that Duke and Risk are knocked out in red, that's not just to separate planes, to put them in the foreground and to, in front of this background that's not moving. If you did them in yellow or orange or red, it would get a similar effect. It's not just that they are in front of those other things, it's that they're angry, right? And red is the color of anger and passion, right? And if you did that in blue, or green or brown, it would not have quite an effect. And so if like red for anger seems obvious here, yeah. Okay. So back to that spread, back to page 1 and then pages 2 and 3. Bellaire is also, in kind of a messy way that I love, using her digital brushes. Like look at panel 3 where Clutch is walking down this hallway. There are these up and down digital brush strokes which are expressive, and they are in the background creating a texture and an impression of metallic reflections. And at the same time, they're just creating a little variety, right? And if you go forward to the page 2 and 3 spread, like it looks sort of messy. It might look like a mistake. And maybe if you sort of stare at it for too long, it sort of draws too much attention to it. But as I was reading this comic, it's really awesome. And it's sometimes hard to explain why it works, but it creates variety and texture. Okay, so let's stop talking about how wonderful the color is, because I could do that for another 10 minutes.
Should we talk about this story moment as well? That sort of we open the issue with Clutch, still very much, in disguise in the base and sort of in over his head, and as last issue, he's there. Get your head straight on straight, Clutch. You got this. First, find a way to get word to the Duke and the Joes. Gotta be some kind of communication hub around here. And opening up to this giant scene, and then immediately sort of in this confrontation with Mercer, who, showing his leadership style here, sort of thwack, get to work, Viper. I got a bit turned around. He's not sort of he's not the sort of caring, sharing kind of boss of these Vipers here, is he? He's we all took a few hits, but nobody on my team just gets to turn around. And he's pointing.
Then he points a gun
pointing
at him.
the gun at him. Maybe you need some better motivation.
So I just want to point out in that third panel where Clutch is reacting, you can see Mercer's reflection in the silver mask of the Viper helmet that Clutch is wearing. And you can tell from sort of 3 shapes, the sort of the haircut, the broad shoulders, and then those 3 red stripes on Mercer's chest. And that is a very small visual storytelling element. That's not just a physical reality that, we can see someone in a reflection, right? This is Reilly subtly showing his chops. But we are worried as the audience. We're worried about Clutch. We don't want him to get caught. We do want him to get a message out, and we want him to, grab some evidence and get out of there safely. And because this is a, slightly pulpy piece of entertainment, and because writer Joshua Williamson knows he's only got 20 pages, right? Half this issue is not Clutch infiltrating and sneaking around, right? You turn the page, Clutch is immediately almost seemingly found out by not just any bad guy, but like the scariest bad guy that he can imagine up until now. And then, as Mark just said, it escalates as at the end of page 3, Mercer points a not just a gun, a machine gun. It's like one of these lasers, right?
And then it's top trumps, because then he runs into the next scariest bad guy. It's Destro, although Destro sort of seems to get to like the hub of the point here, that Mercer is taking his frustration out on the Vipers because he had encountered this, not quite a loss, but quite a severe loss in terms of most of his squad ended up, dying, getting exploded. And more importantly, he went in there wearing this Viper mask in issue 1 when he went into this scientific facility, and that broke, and he was able to be identified by Duke, so allowing Duke then to paste the pictures of this. That's that guy from Destro's office that I recognized who chucked me out previously. So he was sort of immediately able to kind of piece a little bit more of the puzzle together than Destro would really have liked. And yeah, Mercer very deferential to Destro. Whatever you say, boss, just give me another chance and you will have it.
Look at this body language that Reilly uses on the top of this. This is page 4, where Destro is just, he's not angry. He's just lightly admonishing, right? And he he pushes the front of Mercer's rifle aside with his two fingers. And, Destro has a light scowl. And then look at the rhythm of black and white in this panel, where Reilly has Vipers that are mostly white in front of some black background, Destro, who's mostly black, in front of some white background, a chunk of black that's now in front of Mercer, and then Mercer finishes off the page left to right as white. And so Reilly is giving colorist Jordie Bellaire really good stuff to work with, and then she is only enhancing it. But this book would totally work as a black and white edition. Skybound, take my money, please. And Mark, and we could do this for almost any page, but let's do it for this page. So there's this black, white on the top panel. There is some of it happening in the second panel where there's all this sort of negative space of the ground plane and then the lower ground plane down those stairs. You get those two strips of black for that sort of stapler shape that you referred to, the sort of top and side of this bay where they're doing electrical experiments. And then it happens again on the third panel where we've got Destro mostly in black in front of something that's white, and then Mercer mostly white in front of something that's kind of black. And then in the final panel, it happens where maybe there's less balance here, but sort of overall, the page is really nicely balanced, and Reilly is drawing it knowing it's going to be colored, but he's drawing it such that you could publish it in black and white. And that's what almost all comics were in the 30s through 90s. And it is sort of in modern computer coloring where artists might know that colorists can do a lot more than they used to be able to, and add a lot of volume that they couldn't technically or didn't have the time to do, that artists might draw a lot less now, knowing the color artist is going to fill in a lot
And
more.
here's the thing, Tim, that the DC just recently published Batman Year One Noir Edition.
Just for issue one.
Illustrated by Chris Samney,
Who Reilly has said is an influence.
Yeah, who Reilly has said is an influence. So I think they're very much in that same sort of family of art styles, and yeah, if it works for Chris Samney, then why not? I'd be quite happy to see that.
Something dramatic happens on page 5, and the page turned to page 6, which recalls issue 1 of Cobra Commander, where Joshua Williamson sets up this clever misdirect where Cobra Commander says that he knows that they have been infiltrated. And then you see this panel that shows Clutch behind these other two Vipers.
Sort of going, "Urgh." You almost think you might have a trickle of sweat sort of going down his Viper helmet.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I would so this is panel 2 on page 5. This is one of those things where I'd love to see Joshua Williamson's description of this panel, because I'm sure he wrote something that Reilly can't really draw, like Clutch shifts nervously standing behind the two Vipers, or as Mark just said, trickles of sweat run down Clutch's face behind the mask, right? I don't know that he wrote this, but I'm guessing something like this. And Reilly isn't going to draw, like a Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man movie view of Clutch's face inside the helmet, because it's not really how this works. But if Williamson gives him a setup like that, it may be more subtle than Reilly can pull off. It may be more subtle than we can read in Reilly's art, but that is going to affect how Reilly draws this panel of Clutch between these two Vipers. And I feel like I detect the slightest bit of a head cock. That Clutch's head in this Viper helmet is leaning just a little bit to the right. Mm-hmm. But also, it's blank on purpose that we're supposed to read into it. We're going to assign and ascribe our own nervousness. We're going to project our worry onto Clutch here because we're following along. Okay, so Cobra Commander says, Destro, we've been infiltrated. Someone wants to learn our secrets. And then by the bottom of the page, Destro walks right up to not Clutch, but one of those other two Vipers. Because I'm convinced that Clutch is behind the other two Vipers.
Oh, yeah.
But as close as Cobra Commander can get, right? And then you turn the page, and okay, so and it's not Clutch. Cobra Commander did not know that they'd been infiltrated by a Joe disguised as a Viper. Cobra Commander knew that they'd been infiltrated by this scientist who, it turns out, is a Cobra Law assassin in disguise as Homo sapiens. And made me think of issue 1 of Cobra Commander, where Williamson has that Cobra Law person who looks just like that character from G.I. Joe the movie, who is mutated, and we learned that that's Cobra Commander. And that's the guy who says, retreat, retreat. And then you turn the page and he gets shot. And then it's actually Cobra Commander who says, no, I'm not the one who calls retreat that you know from the 1980s cartoon. I'm the Energon Universe Cobra Commander, and I am bold and terrifying. And that happens again here. And I liked the sort of the parallel. And also, it's just a great 2 pages of sort of adding tension to this scene that's already tense, because we're already worried about Clutch. And then again, Clutch is trapped. As we just said, he bumps into Mercer, then he bumps into Destro, and now Cobra Commander is 5 inches from his face.
And talking about an infiltrator that he's going to root out.
It's great. And then Cobra Commander breaks the jaw, tears out the throat. It's a little unclear, but it's bad.
Grabs him around his face, and sort of going by the damage that we see from the subsequent page, the sort of and particularly more evident in the colors, where you've got the contrast of the skin tone and then this greeny blue underneath. That there's just been a fairly significant amount of damage that's been made to this face from that crunch, which leaves as well a blood trail from this guy who's sort of staggering forward. But the sort of the framing of it and the body language is all very clever, because this Cobra Law agent is sort of immediately kind of lurching away from the other people in this space, so Destro and the Mercer and the Vipers, such that they're only going to see his back and not see his exposed face.
You're saying that they don't know that he's from Cobra Law. Only Cobra Commander. And Cobra Commander whispers, Globulus sent you to die. He whispers it. So Cobra Commander doesn't want anyone to know that he's not a regular human?
That's my sense, that they don't know, and he doesn't want them to know. So when Destro says, he only seemed to target you, Cobra Commander, he says, of course, as I am the most valued person here. He doesn't say, of course, I betrayed an alien race that lives in the North Pole who want to kill me for taking their secrets, which includes this giant robot that I had captive for a while, and I took all of his things about, and I got this tracker for the energon, which also you don't know about properly yet, which I'm keeping secret. He doesn't say that bit.
If Joshua Williamson catches a cold and can only plot an issue, I know he's not writing Marvel style, but I would love it if he plotted an issue and Tom Reilly drew it and you wrote all the dialogue.
So there we go. And we're getting into sort of real James Bond territory, because he falls, he doesn't just have his head crushed and he falls over and dies and gets dragged off. He falls into a giant pit of robot snakes, which Cobra Commander has handily got. I don't know if you saw this. He's handily got a remote controller for. And
there's a sound effect.
Beep beep. So it's like, let me turn on the lights. Oh no, wrong button. Sorry about that. No. So he's got a remote controller for a hole that opens up in the middle of the room, which is full of killer robot snakes. What else can you say?
I also had a James Bond reference with this conveniently placed and equipped death trap. I do feel like this is another example of Joshua Williamson writing his take on the 1980s cartoon. This is not the live action movie Cobra Commander. This is not his version of the Larry Hama Real American Hero Cobra Commander. This is not even sort of this isn't Cobra Commander from the Chuck Dixon, IDW universe. This is a new take that's more vicious on the animated Cobra Commander, except that he doesn't call retreat. I think that's all I had to say about this opening scene. I did have the first panel of page 9, where we see the exterior of the pit. And this is the page where the rest of it is that fight with sort of the copied and paste background. Hey, Mark, look, there are 2 construction cranes outside at the pit. So I think they're building up the pit, or they're building up the topside misdirect disguise for the pit. Either way, I like it.
Yeah. It's nice. It's sort of it gives you a bit of what are they up to? What we're going to get from that construction, which has sort of been a little bit alluded to so far. But let's not forget that when we were introduced to the pit, it was a mothballed site, so it wasn't like a fully finished thing. And yeah, during the Duke series as well, it did, I think, suffer a little bit of damage as well. So they are, I guess, unmothballing it and sort of building it up to be a bit more of an active, cutting edge base. On that page in the original art, you get to see a little bit of the behind the scenes mechanics of how a page like that can be done, where in the modern day where you've got a sort of repeated scene. And I know, Tim, that you're less of a fan of just reusing the art, but what Tom Reilly is doing for these panels where the Baroness and Hawk are sort of being seen multiple times with the it's very similar poses, is he is just sort of drawing the bits that are changing. So the Baroness Baroness sort of cocking her head, pointing her hand to Hawk, and otherwise leaving it, I think, presumably up to the colorist to just do a copy paste, stitch everything together.
I think in this case, Reilly is scanning the art himself and doing that work. I think you could ask a color artist to do it. I think more often you'd have the color artist copy and paste something on those computer monitors in the background. Yeah. But if it's the raw art,
I think you're right. I think you're right, Tim. Yeah. It would be. I'm forgetting that he scans it himself. He might do some digital manipulation to that art before handing it across. So he's probably completing the art himself digitally, leaving enough there for him to do that with the inks, but knowing how he wants to complete it is the final art.
That Baroness head in panel 4, once you paste in everything else behind it, you probably still have to do a tiny bit of art touch up where her head and neck connect with her shoulders from that previous panel, that kind of thing. And then you turn the page. Is this the splash? I don't know wrestling. Is this a wrestling move? Is this a pile drive?
It seems something a bit like that. It's very sort of OTT.
Wait. What's OTT?
Over the top.
Okay.
Over the top.
As I said, I really don't know.
No, that's just general.
Okay.
A general thing.
Okay, I thought OTT is not some league, right? Like, the OTT wrestling league. OTT figures from Hasbro.
And that's it for now from the TTFN wrestling lead. So yeah, his sort of wrist is kind of upside down, wrapped around with his legs wrapped and his arms wrapped around Duke's sort of forearm. That's a big old forearm, as they're sort of in midair, and Duke is leaping up like as if to they're in sort of mid pile drive maneuver. So it's a slightly strange composition, but I guess it's almost as much as anything to kind of give you a sense of this is a full-on scrap. They're no holds barred kind of thing, that they're really tearing at each other.
Sometimes when I'm reading comics, I play a little mental exercise. I think, if I was to buy one page from this issue, what page would I buy? And sometimes it's the obvious page, like the page 1 splash, or the page 20 sort of finale surprise. Sometimes, like way back in issue 1 of Duke, I think it was pages 4 and 5, just Duke and Hawk talking with all those shadows on them from the blinds in the window. I turned the page here and I thought something different. I thought, and this is in a good, funny way. This is not an insult. I thought, who wants this page? Who out there has always wanted a G.I. Joe splash, but maybe they really like wrestling, or maybe they really like the Baroness, but like us, they like the Baroness when she's not overtly sexualized, or maybe there's someone who wants a cover, but covers are too expensive, and splash pages are kind of like covers, but not as expensive, and who like wants some background, but wants it to be sort of more about the figures, but it's something action, or like, is there someone out there whose 5 favorite things in Joe are like the pit and these 3 characters, and like not the new character because maybe we don't know him very well, and then action or fighting. And I sort of chuckled to myself, like, lots of pages when Tom Reilly sends his art over to his agent or his dealer are going to take longer to sell because it's just like Destro's elbow and like a couple of vipers like walking down some stairs, or like the previous page, half it hasn't been drawn because there's some copy and paste. And this is either going to be the first page that sells from this issue or the last, but somewhere out there, this page is going to make a very particular fan very happy.
Maybe it's someone who likes collecting art and really doesn't like risk, and wants to get the page of him having the tar beaten out of him. Hello to Carl, who's joined us. Carl's collection there, and a G.I. Joe and more broad art collector who I think has already got a few of Tom Reilly's originals in his collection. And he does very nice showcases on his personal YouTube channel, Carl's Collection. Very nicely done as when he presents his latest art hauls. So when you're done here, go and have a look and check that out if you haven't before.
Carl says the strength in Tom's art is in his ability to tell a story. Panel pages are way more interesting. Yeah. And I agree. As much as I would love a Tom Reilly cover or splash page, the work he does in composing across a page in several panels, like showing emotion on faces, showing characters traversing space, building tension, telling story visually that works even without the word balloons. It is really fun to see these Tom Reilly pages.
Very good.
Okay, Mark.
So where are we? Right, we are in that fight, and Risk is, he is escalating things because he's got like these electro knuckle dusters that he's now clipping on and powering up to escalate the whole fight. It's bringing knuckle dusters to a fist fight. So ready to continue that fight. But before we get there, there is a blade that flies through the air and thucks. I said thuck, Tuhk, into the wall.
I wanted to ask, since I am not a big collector of classified toys, Mark, when you saw this knife, did you say, I know who it has thrown it based on the knife?
No. I don't know how toy accurate this particular knife is versus the classified toy. I don't know if I would have put 2 and 2 together before the page turn. I don't know whether I lingered it long enough to do that, but if I were to make a guess, I think I probably would have said it's Stalker breaking up the fight, which, indeed is exactly what it is. He's the man here. He is the sort of the one calming down the the man babies who are having their fight.
Look at what Tom Reilly does. Back to Carl's comments about Reilly telling a story. Look what Reilly does on this page on the top panel and the bottom panel. Stalker is having a hard time standing up.
Yeah, he's still injured.
Because he's so injured. And Reilly, to use a film term, tips the camera. He tilts the camera. It's a Dutch angle. So if you look at the doorway, those are diagonal lines. So Reilly is adding to your sense that Stalker is a little off balance, that he might fall over, that he's leaning against the doorway, that he needs help to support himself. But you look at the panels of Duke and Risk, right? And you look at that panel of them shaking hands where Stalker's in the background and Reilly writes the quote camera and has these straight up and down doorways and walls and desks that are drawn straight up and down because they're not off balance. And that handshake is sort of them, meeting him halfway. And then the camera goes back to him like trudging out of the room.
Supporting his weight on the door frame as he goes. It's really great body language.
Yeah. And this page would be as clear if Reilly had drawn that top panel and that bottom panel sort of straight up and down without any kind of tilt. But it is more emotionally effective, even if you don't quite know what's happening, right? Even if you didn't see it when you read this issue, your brain is picking up this information that Stalker isn't just leaning. Graphically, he's really leaning.
And Stalker is breaking up this fight, but he's got to be pretty damn confident in his ability to throw a knife accurately to break up that fight that we were seeing, because it's landing there between the two of them. What's that, like a foot in between them while they're moving at speed to about to punch each other.
And he's not seeing in stereo. He has limited depth perception because one of his eyes is bandaged. Right. As Greg Augustin says, one working eye in a sling and still accurately throws his knife. Well, I'm just reminded that all of these characters are the best of the best of the best. And so even an injured Joe has superb aim and accuracy.
And great dialogue here, and really sort of just establishing the kind of guy that Stalker is. He's definitely one of the G.I. Joe A-listers. He's always on Larry Hama's A-list team. And, you should be ashamed of yourselves. One of us is dead, another missing, and you're busy with a beep measuring contest. Who's the bigger guy? And Duke is very much the top. But Stalker, this guy insulted. I don't care. This is some genuine amateur hour garbage right here. Be men and shake hands. Damn it. And I guess Duke is meant to be the superior officer here, right? He's going to be Stalker's boss. First it's Hawk, then Duke, then you.
My favorite line of dialogue in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th panel on the page. Look at that. Everybody's friends again. Okay, so this doesn't feel like the Duke that I know, because Duke here has a short fuse, and he's a hothead. But this is the beginning of the G.I. Joe story in this new universe. And we do see, there are a couple of references in the Duke miniseries where he goes off and, the Baroness or Rock and Roll or Clutch says something like, man, he just flies off the handle and dives right in. And we see it in issue 1 as well. So this does feel of a piece with that. I don't know if I love that this Duke is so impatient, but at the same time, the thing about G.I. Joe is if all these characters are the best of the best and they're all smooth operators, you don't ever get a scene like this. And so it might be unrealistic that you'd have such a high-ranking and expert character actually get into not just an argument, but a fist fight. But without that, you don't have as much interpersonal drama. So I'll allow it. I also wonder if Stalker breaking up this fight, is this Williamson sort of alluding back to Stalker's original file card? Because didn't Stalker lead a gang?
Yep.
So he must, that's one version of conflict resolution. If you can keep your gang together, because there's probably people in your gang who don't get along. So this is a great scene, and the fight goes for a while. It's a full page in the previous issue, and then is it 3 pages in this issue? So in terms of comic book real estate, Williamson is spending some time on this.
Yep.
As for that curse word, I just wanted to point out that the pound symbol, $, percentage symbol, and @ symbol, which Williamson here is using for the a man's manhood, and then it happens again at the bottom of the page, I think. Whereas back on page 1, in the first panel of the entire comic book, Clutch uses 4 cobra symbols in his word balloon. So I think I'm okay with this. It does feel a little inconsistent, but I guess I think Clutch here is using a word that rhymes with ship, and Stalker is using a word here that rhymes with prick. Those words are, one of them is like an exclamation and one is a noun. So maybe that's why they're being treated differently in terms of symbols. Either way. Okay, so on page 13, they're talking about what they're going to do. And Duke holds up a piece of paper. And I love this.
Yeah.
He has drawn off panel, between panels. Duke has drawn from recollection the Cobra symbol. He says, this is them. We got to go after this. And okay, just since we're looking at a close-up of this panel, again, I want to point out that as sort of realistic and detailed as Tom Reilly's art can get when he draws clothing and vehicles and gear and weapons, when you zoom in on his faces, he's cartooning a lot. And I really see that here with, the eyes and the nose and the mouth, right? I love it. But I have a pet peeve in comics when a character who's a kid draws something, and then the artist who's drawing the actual comic book draws something in a kid style that's far more developmentally advanced than that kid could draw, right? It's like, I read this great issue by Paul Jenkins and Mark Buckingham of Spider-Man, and this kid draws like him and Spider-Man. And like Buckingham draws this good kid art, except like the kid and Spider-Man are swinging and their feet are out. It's like, no. Second graders don't draw foreshortening. They don't draw like hands or guns or feet, aiming at the quote camera. And it's not just sort of the detail like blobby heads or, whatever, but it's sort of the thinking behind it. And this is a really small thing, but comics are made up of many, many small things. But I love here that Reilly has sort of invented a Cobra symbol that someone as smart and observant as Duke is, he's getting it close enough that sort of as intelligence, it's like, this is what we're looking for. So now when the rest of them, when they go see it for the first time, they'll recognize it. It's that thing that Duke drew, but it also, it's not perfect. And like Reilly didn't like comp in Photoshop the actual Cobra symbol, which he could have done and wouldn't have made sense. And Reilly didn't trace the actual Cobra symbol so that, Duke has drawn a perfect Cobra symbol. Duke has drawn a slightly simplified, slightly imperfect Cobra symbol. And I love it.
But so CoverGirl runs into the room sort of very excited to hear that they've got a message in from, a recorded message in from Clutch. Sorry to interrupt. The message came over the secure line. It's garbled and we couldn't track it. It's garbled because Cobra is skimping on their broadband. But you want to hear this. So CoverGirl maybe sort of reading into that, again, someone very injured, not going to be in necessarily the best of moods, but looking quite delighted to hear about Clutch being alive and well. And similarly, on the subsequent page, you got a nice big beaming smile out of her. That was all we got, but Clutch is alive.
Reilly has drawn this tablet, iPad, wall-mounted monitor video image of Clutch. Reilly has drawn it normally, and then I believe here is where he leaves a note for Jordie Bellaire. Can you add some, static? Can you add some horizontal roll lines? Can you lower the resolution so we see this a little bit more as pixels rather than clean inking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's teeing them up for the next bit of plot.
Right, and the Baroness asks as the scene ends, "Excuse me, who the hell is this guy?"
Yeah.
Right? She's asking this like Watson asks Sherlock Holmes questions. She's asking the questions that we have. In this moment, she represents the audience because everyone else seems to know who this guy is. She doesn't, and we don't. Mark, remind me, Dr. Monav, we got his name in the previous issue, right?
Yep.
We already had a conversation that this is a new name for a character, and we've never had this name before.
We've not had it in the comics, but it exists in G.I. Joe history. So it exists in the Renegades cartoon and in the file card of the Collectors Club figure.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So new to comics, but not new that hasn't been used before in the world of G.I. Joe. And yeah, it's only then a couple of pages later that these sort of bodyguards, or what look to be sort of, you know, agents or whatever, that are protecting him in this motorcade that is escorting him to the Senate. They sort of needle him a bit. He's talking about his work. What you and your small-minded authority refuse to understand is that my brainwave scanner is the future. It will help us better understand the human mind. You mean to better control someone's mind, reprogram people so you can turn them into slaves? Didn't you, Dr. Venom? There we go. Dropping the nickname and integrating it nicely. That it's almost like a cruel media-generated nickname that has been given to him.
So I always appreciate it when artists remember not to draw tall buildings in downtown DC, because there aren't and cannot be any tall buildings in downtown DC. There are no skyscrapers in DC. And once again, look at this page. There's like 3 colors. I mean, yes, the sky behind the Capitol in the first panel. Yeah, there's a little bit more going on there. But once we're in the car, you'd almost think that Jordie Bellaire is, when she colors this book, she's given half the time as normal. And she thinks, how do I give myself limitations? Okay, 3 or 4 colors per scene, right? Peach, gray, lavender, dull aqua, right? And I don't think she's necessarily being given some terrible deadline. I think a lot of colorists are often given terrible deadlines as a general rule, but it tells you what time of day it is. Mm-hmm. I think logically this wants to be, 8 a.m.
Right.
Either way, I'll take it, because here the colors can be a little bit more emotional than physical and logical. But in either case, I'm aware of the sun coming from a light source coming from one side. And I really appreciate here that Tom Reilly has seemingly looked at some Mike Vosburgh drawings of Dr. Venom and figured out that Mike Vosburgh was drawing a very specific face when he drew Dr. Venom in 1983 and 1984. Gaunt, angular, pronounced cheekbones, receding hairline. And not only is Reilly drawing a slightly younger but very similar version of that character, it is also not a face we have quite seen so far in G.I. Joe, right? So Reilly does this thing that really excellent artists do, which is that he differentiates faces between characters. Like, I'm okay if really good artists draw kind of the same face for Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne, but they have slightly different hair. That's okay. It is exciting when they do other things with, cheekbones and foreheads and noses. And Williamson here, with that dialogue that you read, where Dr. Monev says, what you and your small-minded authority refuse to understand, is that Williamson is having Dr. Monev, Dr. Venom, say this for our benefit. I feel like logically in this scene, Dr. Monev wouldn't be telling the 2 FBI agents who are guarding him in the back of a car as he drives to his deposition, trial. But I do feel like he would have said this a few times in the last few, weeks or months of his life, where he's, defending himself. So this is a nice sort of convenient writing bit.
Yeah, I was waiting for a point to interrupt and say as well. I think that Vosburgh was basically using Christopher Lee as his inspiration for Venom, and Barking Fridge, as on the chat, said the same thing. Tom Reilly, it's nice that he's sort of picking up on that similar sort of look. He's not trying to reinvent him. He is sort of, picking up on those visual cues that definitely work for the character.
Reilly slightly cartoons when he draws faces. And if you turn the page, when Venom is crawling out of the car, Reilly draws a dot for his eye. Like suddenly, this is not an Hergé drawing of Tintin, right? Reilly is not drawing in the clear line style, because he's definitely changing his line. There are thicks and thins. But he's definitely reducing that face into a like 1930s Belgian cartoony, like this starts to look like Joost Swarte, who also draws in the clear line style. But okay, so this page and the one preceding it, this is where Williamson finally amps up our concern that Cobra Commander's plan is fully in effect, or that it's getting interrupted and it's sort of getting worse. But someone tears into this SUV, and I'm actually not sure how. Because Mark, the sound effect on this page that we're looking at right now is rip. Are the Joes ripping this door off what did Duke do?
Well, it looks like the glass is sort of bursting inwards and then the person's getting pulled outwards.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But I think it was sort of trying to, it's kind of from the perspective of Venom sat down in the middle and all of this chaos is interrupting him and he's sort of going through all of these different emotions, very visible on his, cartooning of his face of like, shock, surprise, fear, terror, and then sort of disbelief, as he's sort of, across each one of these panels, he's sort of thinking and feeling something slightly differently. Yeah, it's almost like sort of how you might envisage sort of like, Batman interrupting a mugging where you're not really sure what's going off and the mugger's like, rah, rah,
Yeah, someone's flying
it's all
in
a
front
bit
of the
larger
camera
than life.
So Venom's in the back of this SUV and these two agents target him for execution. And I think Williamson doesn't want you to know what is happening at the moment, that these might be regular government guys who have turned bad. They're rotten. This might be undercover Cobra guys. This might be undercover Cobra Law guys. I don't think there's much room for it to maybe be like related to the G.I. Joe characters. But we do know that there is this other G.I. Joe faction out there that was shown briefly in the Energon Universe special, which is the epilogue to the Duke miniseries, and we have not picked up that thread again. But not until the final panel of this page that we're looking at right now, 2019, 18, 17, where a pistol is pointing at the back of Dr. Venom's head, execution style, and the word balloon says, "Not so fast, Doctor." But I can tell from that glove in color that that's not Mercer or a Cobra character, that's definitely one of the Joes. It's definitely Duke. And then you turn the page and you get this little bit of relief and closure where it is indeed Duke. And he says, "We're here to save you." So Mark, talk about how this issue wraps up.
So we've got the Joes sort of literally being parachuted in on their Ram motorcycles to save Monev. Duke, I think, is lifting him up by the scrap of his not neck, but his back of his jacket. And Risk and Baroness are along for the ride. I think those are essentially the only two Joes still not knocked up enough to be able to come on this mission. Which isn't to say they didn't have any damage. They did sort of have some injuries from their mission, and then Duke and Risk did go at each other as well. And yeah, Risk is showing this delight of just landing down off of a parachute on his motorbike. Love this. And Baroness, very weary, sigh, children, And so they just before they take off on their motorbikes, we get a bit of an understanding as to what these two agents actually are. The front of their shirts are now open, and we can see a red uniform underneath with a Cobra logo. Then gets a boot to the face from Risk, and this is confusing. They've not encountered these guys before. He's like, these don't look like the Cobra soldiers that attacked in the lab. That's because they're Crimson Guard, Duke, sleeper agents. They could be anyone. So this is Risk talking here.
That.
Yeah.
So Duke and the other Joes do not know about this tier of Cobra, and Risk, who only has a little bit of sort of publishing history. He has that one scene in issue number 1 or number 2 where he's
1, yeah.
he's somewhere else on his mission, and then he gets called in. He knows more about Cobra than Duke does.
Well, the thing is the Crimson Guard exist as an entity prior to Cobra in this world. So in the Destro miniseries, we find a lot more about Tomax and Xamot and the Crimson Guard. So in that series, the Crimson Guard seem to be treated as like sort of the elite force working for extensive enterprises, as like a kind of a subcontracting, contracted army that can be hired from Tomax and Xamot. And in the way that they were presented in that series, it did seem like they were just more like military, like an elite military force, rather than the kind of sleeper agent aspect to them, which isn't to say that both things can't exist, that they perhaps they are also used in a kind of sleeper agent capacity.
Or now that Cobra Commander has taken over Mars and extensive enterprises, he's redeployed the Crimson Guard
and using them in a different way. Yeah,
this undercover force. Maybe Cobra Commander said, stencil this logo on all of your Crimson Guardsmen uniforms and put them in a closet in the suburbs of DC.
Yeah, everyone wear this logo so you can be a little bit more effective in your disguises.
So Risk uses his boots to sort of pull aside the unconscious Crimson Guardsman's jacket and shirt to reveal the Crimson Guard's uniform underneath. And Risk says, "Hey, Duke," I'm reading actual Joshua Williamson dialogue right here. He says, "Hey, Duke, that drawing you did on that piece of paper back at the pit, that was really accurate. Here's that symbol."
So Baroness now is putting connecting the dots. Risk is right. We need to move on. I've heard of the Crimson Guard as well. And if they've been activated, their bosses can't be far behind. Zap, zap, zap. Some blue lasers. Because in pursuit, followed by some more zap, zap, zaps, are the Crimson Guard.
Wait. Go back.
Okay.
Look at Dr. Monev's reaction at the bottom right of the panel. Because he's still handcuffed.
Yep.
So he's holding on, and Duke is accelerating, and there are no seatbelts on motorcycles. So he's being jerked back, and he's probably a little worried about his life in general from assassination, and also staying on the motorcycle. Okay, so you turn the page, and it's the introduction of the Crimson Twins, and also the Cobra Stinger, which we did see in Destro in a panel or two, but you get a very distinctive Cobra grill here, which I think is a Tom Reilly invention, which I'm sure the likes of Gridiron will start making customs of almost immediately, because it does look very cool and make you think, why is that something that hasn't existed for 40 years already by this point? Because it is very, very cool. Now, Mark, I am used to 1984 Stinger missiles that are all red, and I'm seeing here Stinger missiles that are red and white. I don't have the classified Stinger. Is this Reilly and or Jordie Bellaire sort of having their own way with this modern take on something that is both classic and modern, or is this accurate to the newest version of that Jeep?
Yeah, here we go. The Stinger there for classified looks broadly like the illustration we've got.
Okay.
But the missiles are all red, so they've sort of added a little bit of flair with this, whatever the color is, white, grey, to it, and added on this designer grill.
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
Tim, did you notice that we had a bit of an error detected here on this page?
You're not talking about the typo on page 2?
No, I'm talking about this very page here.
Tomax doesn't have a scar, so it should be Xamot and Tomax.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the drawings are... Okay, logically, you want to say Tomax's name first, but yes, Tomax Tomax is depicted in the bottom driving the vehicle, but it is the word Tomax is next to a drawing of Zaymot, and the word Zaymot is next to a drawing of Tomax.
Yes. So it's not, I mean, if we're going to be precise about these things, it's not that one of them has, called the other the wrong name, or they've not said, I, Tomax, am going to shoot you, or anything like that. It's the narration boxes being next to the characters, making you think, logically, the implication would be that if there's a narration box that says Tomax, it would be next to Tomax, but it's not the case here.
Yeah, in the graphical visual language of comics, you'd want to flip those two words, even though, if you're on the top right now and I'm on the bottom in this visual live stream video recording of our episode, if someone were to say, oh yeah, Tim and Mark, right? Even though you're first and I'm second, sort of like that.
So the issue concludes here. This is the final page. Quite an exciting page to end on. It's really setting up the next issue. I'm ready to talk about your error detected whenever you're ready, Tim.
Page 2, panel 3.
Okay, page 2, panel 3.
Matthew Matson says, originally, Hama drew Tomax with the scar. It was that way in the introduction of the character. It wasn't until post 2K he switched it.
I believe this is a reference back to the original Marvel comic issue 37 that introduced Tomax and Zaymot there. And in that issue, written by Larry Hama and illustrated by Frank Springer, Tomax was drawn as having the scar. So there is a long pedigree of having Tomax and Zaymot having swappable scars.
You're talking only about the Marvel comic, but the character would have originally been designed by Ron Rudat at Hasbro. So is there an inconsistency here in which one is Tomax, sort of back to the 80s? Or okay. Page 2, panel 3.
So is that the one with Clutch reacting with the Mercer silhouette? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Clutch, disguised as a Cobra Viper, says, I got a bit turned around, sir. I think I took too many hits to the head in that fight. 2, when it is an amount like too much, is spelled TOO. And I'm going to send an email to Skybound asking that they hire a proofreader, because 3 issues of G.I. Joe, Energon Universe, or Real American Hero in the last 3 months have had typos. Mm-hmm. And I know this makes me seem like a grump, but I find that embarrassing. I know that teenagers and people who text and email a lot, who write essays, like, no, it's no big deal. Like, oh, I see typos on websites and blogs all the time. Yes, but I'm going back to a standard of like the 60s or 70s or 80s where you do not see typos in newspapers and magazine articles. And folks, if you have read Marvel's G.I. Joe Order of Battle, you know that Marvel had a proofreader. And I'm not saying Marvel invented this, but there is a precedent. And what I really mean, Skybound shouldn't hire a proofreader. Skybound should have one more sort of final pass where like 3 of their editors are reading everything, looking for errors, because this is G.I. Joe and Skybound is treating G.I. Joe so well and so special. And something like this bums me out and distracts me and makes me sad.
Yeah, my reaction to that when you pointed it out was, ooh. I don't know if the subtlety of that fantastic reaction fully landed. Ooh, multiple O's there. So I'm glad that you will send an email to Skybound, TWO, Skybound.
There's a letter here that I really like. Mm-hmm. And there's a comment that I find really interesting. First, the comment. So letter writer Scotty asks about, says, can we expect a series which sees heroes from G.I. Joe, Transformers, Void Rivals, and other Hasbro properties? And the answer is, ultimately, our entire focus right now is to build out our 3 monthlies, Void Rivals, Transformers, and G.I. Joe, and make them sustainable and exciting. And I think there was a comment like that in last month's issue of Void Rivals, or maybe it was last month's issue of G.I. Joe, because I think we've all been wondering, for a year, there were 2 G.I. Joe comics a month. There was Destro and Cobra Commander. There was Duke and Cobra Commander. There was Destro and Scarlet. And there has only been one Transformers series, and there's only been one Void Rivals series. But we're all aware of how many characters there are in Transformers and in G.I. Joe, and potentially in Void Rivals. And I think many of us want there to be enough space to give all these characters their due. And I think also a lot of readers can spend another $4 or $8 a month on 1 or 2 more comics to get more content. So some of it is sort of the size of the container, and some of it is how much you want to drink the container, to invent and mangle a metaphor. And I feel that way too. I would definitely buy a second Joe book or a second Transformers book. And I think what reading between the lines, I think Skybound is saying a couple things. One, it was really hard to do that year of those 2 G.I. Joe miniseries, because it's not just having a writer and an artist, it's also all the promotion that goes into getting, bloggers and podcasters and stores and the distributors excited about the next miniseries, the next issue. There's a lot of work in wrangling all these covers. If you're doing one series, and an issue of G.I. Joe has 5 or 6 covers, that's one thing. If you're doing 2 G.I. Joe comics a month, presumably that's 10 or 12 covers, and that's just a lot of editorial, mileage and emails and cajoling and payroll, and Hasbro approvals. I also think that the other 2 things are that Skybound doesn't want to overdo it. And I think Skybound saw IDW overdo it at different points. You could argue that Dreamwave and Devil's Due overdid it. Although, the market was in a different place in 2002, 2005, 2008. But, it was a big deal back in 2011, I think, when there had been this Transformers Monthly, and then IDW makes this big announcement that Transformers Monthly is splitting into 2 Transformers Monthlies. I was really excited because I could spend $4 more on an excellent, and they were both excellent, Transformers Monthly. But is that sustainable? And then a year later, there was a 3rd Transformers Monthly. So I think Skybound doesn't want to sort of burn out its audience. And I think Skybound knows that even if 20 pages isn't enough for a lot of us, they would rather do 20 really, and this just sounds like I'm answering a letter, we'd rather do our best with a little bit than risk not doing our best with a lot. But that's totally true. So I am a little sad because I think Skybound could pull off another series or 2, and I'm sure they'd be great. But there is something to be said for, back in the 80s, there was just one Transformers comic and there was just one G.I. Joe comic. And just because for 15 years there were a lot of them and maybe too many. The same thing with X-Men, I say this a lot to my manager at my shop, Jesse. I bet we could sell a lot more of X-Men and Uncanny X-Men if they were the only 2 X-Men books, maybe with a Wolverine monthly. And they were really good. But there are 9 monthly X-Men books. And everyone is someone's favorite, but they're not all amazing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It might be, as a lapsed X-Men reader, if I only had to get 1 title or maybe 2 titles a month, then I might have kept on going. I think if you feel like there's a pressure to get 10 a month or whatever it is, then that's not necessarily sustainable. And if you're not getting the whole picture, then maybe you just want to back off completely.
One last thing, and one last sentence on that. I think Skybound is also building up some sort of healthy impatience and goodwill for later on when there's some crossover or event, which will, at minimum, want people to read, Void Rivals if they're just reading G.I. Joe, and at maximum have some additional comics to buy.
Yeah, if you're like, oh, I want to get more of those comics when they actually finally come, you're more likely to have that reaction. Finally, it's the extra comic or the crossover that we've been waiting for, and not one more. It's a lot more money for me to, as you say. On the first page it says we have very long plans for all of the G.I. Joe lore. Our hope is that if people want G.I. Joe, they get everything they want. In that ongoing series, we're taking our time at laying out the groundwork for a lot of characters and surprises. So yeah, to that point of trying to do everything in one issue. And then Scotty makes
This is the greatest letter in all comics, not written by me. Or Mark. This is the greatest letter in comics not written by a host of Talking Joe.
So he says, and this is probably the best bit of the letter, or from my perspective, he says, I enjoyed listening to Joshua and Tom's interviews on the Talking Joe podcast, particularly Joshua discussing his G.I. Joe classified collection. There is a bit of a typo on the letter in that did you see there's a bit from Joshua which isn't in that bold italics, where he says something I thought about a lot while working on the ongoing series was making sure that we captured that same magic from Duke and Cobra Commander, that same level of energy and excitement. It's awesome to hear you say that we did just that.
And then Scotty says, I wish I lived in Massachusetts so I could go to Hub Comics this weekend to attend Tom's signing event for G.I. Joe #1. Oh, well, comic shops here in Kansas at least had enough copies of G.I. Joe #1. Scotty, thank you so much for mentioning the event at my store and my store by name. What a delightful surprise. I hope there is some G.I. Joe event that brings many fans to the East Coast, and you can come to Hub Comics, and I can point to the little seat in the back of the store, and I can say, that's where Tom Reilly's at.
Then there's another interesting bit from Scotty's letter, because he talks about sort of G.I. Joe sort of branching out into the different sub-teams and wider Hasbro properties. He says, now that G.I. Joe has an ongoing run in full swing, can we expect other Hasbro properties like Mask and Rom the Space Knight to join the Energon universe in the near-distant future? Also, can we expect to see Tiger Force, Night Force, Python Patrol, and the Steel Corps? And in reply, Ben says, I think you'll know by now that at least one of those teams you flagged are making an appearance. And Joshua adds, clues have been placed in the books for some of what you're asking about, but it's too soon to really talk about any of it. You know we love our secrets and surprises.
All right, here's my guess. So, second to last page, before the end of the comic, laser blasts go by Duke, Monev, Risk, and Baroness on those motorcycles, and they're illuminated by an electric blue. So I think the reaction glow force, I think we're gonna get some glow force Joes and Cobra. No, I don't have a guess. What is the guess? Is this because they've done Night Force in Classified?
Well, they've done Night Force in Classified, but more significantly, they did a Night Force variant Ashcan cover. So they have released an Energon Universe comic book with a Night Force logo on the front of it.
Okay, this was just the logo. There's no character.
Just the logo. So they had like Extensive Enterprises, a Rashikage tattoo logo, a Dreadnought logo, a Cobra logo, a Joe logo. And so one of these logo Ashcan variants was a Night Force one. So I think very heavily leaning into the idea that we might have Night Force featuring in Energon Universe. And it makes a lot of sense because Night Force in the Classified line is where they're doing a lot of innovation. So this is where they've got the new character of what's he called, Wolf Spider, and also that new Cobra character whose name eludes me for a second, which is the guy Mole Rat. Thank you, Craig. And he also corrects me that it was actually NYCC. So they had two lots of Ashcan variants. One I think was San Diego, one was later on for NYCC. So there we go. So I think we'll probably see Night Force before too very long.
It's funny, when I was a kid, when the Night Force figures came out, my brother and I got excited, and he said, they would just always do this. Like, there's no reason why the Joes would ever be wearing their normal clothes. They would just always be in, dark gray and dark green and black, because half their missions, or maybe 3/4 of their missions, are just going to take place during the night. And I said, yeah, that makes sense. But, I still want, Shipwreck to be in light blue and Repeater to be in beige. But I think about that sometimes, that Tiger Force, there's a little bit of a story, and, Python Patrol, there's this added function, they deflect radar, and Night Force is we're just wearing darker clothes. But I also love Night Force, so I'm happy to brush that logic aside. Glow Force, you heard it here first.
So I think we're kind of in the world of I Spies a little bit. So
I spy with my little eye.
In the back of the book, we have got an advert for the Invincible Universe Battle Beast, which is a fun book. I love Invincible. I love the Invincible books. So it's great to see Robert Kirkman and Ryan Ottley return to the Invincible Universe. I believe that this is set at some point between stories in the original Invincible run. So sort of, if you're at the end of the Invincible run, looking back, it's sort of set in the past. But the reason I'm calling this out as I Spy is that Battle Beast is a concept that almost exists in this Energon universe, because Battle Beasts were these little toys released by Takara, which in the Japanese version of Transformers were presented as a subset of the Transformers. When they were released for the Western audience, they were kind of released as these sort of standalone little figures with, I think, was it a heat reveal hologram, which had wood, water, fire.
Fire. I will perform a dramatic reenactment of one of the commercials. Wood, water. Wood beats water. Okay.
Yes. Catch Tim off Broadway performing that very soon.
We're going to be in a black box theater wearing a black body stocking, just miming a Battle Beasts game since there was no show.
But to clarify, this is not that. Battle Beast is a character that exists in the Invincible universe, not the Energon universe, even if the name is perhaps inspired by the original Takara toys.
This is not an I Spy so much as this is a fun coincidence, sort of squint and tilt your head almost.
Exactly. And I think I've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to talk about issue 3, other than a wrap-up.
Me too.
So overall, thoughts? It's a good issue. It's a great team. I love the writing of Williamson. I think the stories are exciting and compelling. Leave you on the edge of your seat. They fit a lot into an issue. Have a good cliffhanger. A lot of lot of good characterization. Like I say, that some writers they will write every character as being the same, sort of interchangeable. And we've got some interesting characters here, both in terms of how they are written, but also the visual depiction by Reilly. I think we're really lucky to have a book of this quality, and I'm continuing to enjoy it and look forward to the next issue as they come out. Tim,
I have nothing different to say. 8.
Yeah, I'll go the same. 8. Another great issue from here, and look forward to the next one, issue 4, in 1 month's time.
Maybe a 9.
Wow!
Because even if it's not like an exciting first issue, and it's not an exciting end of arc finale, but G.I. Joe comics have almost never looked this good, and I don't want to get so used to it that a couple issues into a Joshua Williamson, Tom Reilly, Jordie Bellaire G.I. Joe comic. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's good. No. It's great, and it's superlative.
Yeah.
It's peppy. I'm worried about the characters. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I don't know what's going to happen next. There's just enough Transformers stuff that I'm intrigued, and I don't feel like it's sort of relying too much on that as a device or a crutch. I mean, they refer to it once in the issue, and we see that they're doing something in that giant Cobra science hangar bay thing. But this issue is very much about, Joes coming together and trying to figure out what's going on and saving this evil scientist. So 8 or 9.
Fantastic. Yeah. Let's not sort of just fall back to was it as good as the last issue? Because was it as good as all other G.I. Joe comics ever? It's better than most. So next issue 4 will be the 19th of February, almost exactly a month from the day this is being recorded. So if you are new to Talking Joe, what an exciting place to be joining us as we're in this new golden age of G.I. Joe comics. You can find us in the usual places. talkingjoe.co.uk is the website that has links to those places. And those places include Facebook, the Facebook group. Get involved, join in with the discussion and all of the latest news, exclusive looks at latest covers and all of those kind of things. Breaking over there, sharing all sorts of tidbits as we have them on the Facebook group. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. We are also on Patreon. So patreon.com/talkingjoe. So a big thanks to all of our backers, some of whom are watching live, which is great. Thanks to you guys. It's much appreciated. Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, and Mike. They are all getting early access to episodes as well as some exclusive content. Tim, where can people find you when you are not talking to me about G.I. Joe comics?
I own a brick and mortar comic book store in Somerville, Massachusetts, Hub Comics. I have 2 partners, writer-producers who make smart, funny video essays on television and film. That's at YouTube at Atomic Abe. And I write about G.I. Joe at my blog, arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. And we've got a comment here. Hey, guys, I've heard every episode of the podcast, but this is the first time I've seen a live one. Huge fan. Thanks to you. All you do got me through a lot of work shifts. Thank you very much to 6'10" Yo Joe Daddy. What a name. Wow. Yeah. Hats off to you too. We've not done a live in quite some time. I like to have the professional sheen on what we do and sort of being able to record offline, edit. It gives us, brings down a bit of the pressure that we have to get absolutely everything right first time. But this was a lot of fun to do and sort of getting everyone's input as we were going along. Was a lot of fun.
Yes, catch our errors. Please correct us, just as we'll correct Skybound with theirs.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, if we can edit out our errors before people see them, then it makes us look a little bit more professional.
Listeners and viewers, we don't want to have too many errors sneak by.
I see what you did there.
Damn.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
there we go. Very good.
That's what I did.
So
that's what I did there. All right, the show's over.
So that's it. And as always, before we go, Tim, can you please remind us about something?
Well, folks, nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters. TTFN.